Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, an emotional plea and a high-profile death.
I have to fight for the injustice that was done to her.
The family of Rebecca Zahau is now offering up a $100,000 reward. Why they say the infamous Coronado case isn't over. Plus, some City Heights tenants say they're living in filth, how the situation went from hopeless to hopeful. And a first-hand look at a baby rhino born at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. Why the birth could help save the species. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. It's Wednesday, August 14th. I'm Ebony Monet. We begin tonight with new developments and a high-profile death. The Spreckles Mansion hanging mid headlines for nearly a decade. Investigators have ruled Rebecca Zahau's death a suicide, but her family is not giving up. KPBS reporter John Carroll is in Coronado tonight, right outside where the story began. John, what's the latest?
Hey, Ebony, it was the evening of July 12, 2011 that Rebecca Zahau was found dead inside this seaside mansion, the old Spreckles Mansion. The Sheriff's Department, as you were saying, ruled the death a suicide at that point, but the Zahau family never accepted that. Today, the family attorney Keith Greer, with Rebecca's sister Mary Zahau Lehner by his side, announced a $100,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the man they say killed Rebecca, Adam Shacknai. Shacknai is the brother of Jonah Shacknai, Rebecca Zahau's boyfriend at the time. Adam was the last person to see Rebecca alive. He was the one who called 911 after discovering her in the backyard. The Sheriff's Department investigation determined Zahau had tied herself up and then hung herself naked from a second-story balcony. Adam Shacknai was found responsible for her murder by a jury in a civil trial last year, but even after that, Sheriff Gore said last December that the ruling the death was a suicide would stand. That brought a startling charge against the sheriff leveled by Keith Greer.
There is something corrupt in the sheriff's system. It may be the sheriff himself. I think he has good people. I think that some of them eventually, hopefully, will come forward. We have a sheriff who says not only that it could be murder, that it could be suicide, he's convinced it is suicide. And in saying that, he's either lying or delusional.
Mary Zahau Lehner says her sister's death feels like it happened yesterday. She said the insistence on sticking with the verdict of suicide has meant the family cannot heal. She called on people to call the sheriff and demand that the investigation be reopened.
And I know she fought the night she died, and she left plenty of clues and plenty of evidence that were ignored. And I refused to stand down, and my family refused to stand down.
Keith Greer also revealed the results of a review of the polygraph taken by Adam Shacknai, a review that he ordered up. Those results had come back inconclusive, but the expert that Greer hired said that polygraph was not done correctly and that the results should have come back that Adam Shacknai lied. Now, in addition, today, Keith Greer called on the doctor who was the medical examiner at the time here in San Diego to change the cause of death from suicide to homicide. Live in Coronado, John Carroll, KPBS News.
John, what is the Sheriff's Department, if anything, saying about this latest development?
So we contacted them today for a response, Ebony, and just within the last 45 or so minutes, I got one, and here's what it says. It's very brief. The Sheriff's Homicide Unit conducted an objective and thorough investigation into Miss Zahau's death. Our investigation was without assumption as to the cause of her death. The facts of that investigation led to the conclusion that Miss Zahau took her own life. And then he goes on, the Lieutenant Justin White, who sent it to me, goes on to point out a website where we can find information. So they're sticking by their story. Greer also said today that they have filed a grievance against the Sheriff's Department. That's the first step that you have to go through in order to then go ahead and sue the Sheriff's Department civilly. So that is now in process right now, Ebony.
Very interesting. Thanks, John. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi took aim today at President Trump and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. She says the House sent legislation to the Senate to fight back against gun violence. And she says Republicans need to heed the will of the people.
In the near future, we must pass gun violence prevention legislation. Every day we lose lives. And now public sentiment must weigh in to save lives, to pass our bill, and to look at high-capacity magazines that should be eliminated as well.
Pelosi went on to say Americans are tired of mass shootings and want lawmakers to act. As a result, Pelosi says it will be harder for McConnell and the GOP to bury the latest gun bills. In the wake of the Poway shooting and other hate crimes making headlines, a community forum will be held tonight in San Marcos. Topics of discussion will include victim services, community impact, and the House of Worship protection. The event is free and open to all ages. It begins at 6 p.m. at the Cal State San Marcos. The ongoing affordability crisis impacts nearly everyone in California. Refugees, for instance, are, as a whole, hit hard. Now there are a tenants unit to help protect some of the most vulnerable renters. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar takes a look.
The Esalomwa family came to San Diego in 2016 from a refugee camp in Tanzania. They say since moving to their two-bedroom apartment in City Heights, they've dealt with a broken stove and refrigerator and cockroaches in their apartment.
Back in Africa, we thought America was heaven.
America is not good.
But mold is still mold.
Where is the mold actually?
On a recent afternoon, Catherine Mendonça came to visit the Esalomwas and other families living on Polk Avenue. She's a community organizer with the San Diego Tenants Union.
A lot of them are refugee and of immigrant status or non-citizen status. A lot of them have resettled and have just gotten acclimated with what it's like to live in America as far as the routine, the schedule, and a lot of them aren't aware that there are rights with living in a home.
Nicole Johnson lives downstairs. She called the tenants union after getting eviction papers for not paying her rent. She says the people living here have been dealing with awful conditions and the managers responsible for her property are doing nothing to help.
We don't have a working stove. We don't have a working refrigerator. Their toilet was not on the ground properly to where you could move it. The feces water was leaking from their ceiling on me and my daughter.
Mendonça says it's a common problem she sees with low-income and minority tenants, especially when there's a language barrier like with the Esalomwas. She says one of the top priorities of the tenants union is to notify renters of their rights.
People need to think of it more as a contract between two parties versus a landlord that is deciding everyone's fate. It's a mutual contract. When you pay each month, that means you and the property manager, landlord, etc., accepts that contract.
The tenants union also tries to serve as an advocate for renters when they have issues with their landlords. In this case, the properties on Polk Avenue are managed by Prime Asset Management. The owner made a site visit but left before our scheduled interview. He told me over the phone that he hadn't received any work orders from the upstairs tenants and that the issues with Nicole Johnson's apartment had been resolved. He said their company has an online work order system, but acknowledged that it might be difficult to navigate for tenants who don't speak English. Refugee resettlement agencies regularly have to deal with situations like these. Donna Duvin is the executive director of the International Rescue Committee in San Diego, the agency that resettled the Esalomwas.
I do think there's an element of this sense, too, that if they are expressing concerns about their living environment, and if that isn't well received, then that also is risking the safety and stability of their families.
She says during the first 6 months after placing a family in housing, they see them almost every day. Sometimes caseworkers make home visits, but usually the families come to the IRC's offices. Duvin says the IRC tries to educate families about their rights, but it's often hard for them to understand that as tenants, they can speak up about housing problems. Christopher Ridgway is a real estate attorney. He says he frequently deals with habitability issues with tenants and that it's a landlord's responsibility to resolve most problems in a timely manner. He says a landlord could be sued if they don't.
If the population that they're dealing with isn't likely going to sue them, what then?
Then it becomes a moral question.
Really, it's either a business question or a moral question. What's going to motivate somebody?
Excuse me 1 second, sweetie. I got to take some footage.
Back on Polk Avenue, Mendonça says legal help is among the services the tenant union offers as part of a $25 a year membership.
This is a beautiful community. It is so diverse with how many people of different backgrounds live here. And they deserve the same living conditions as anybody else living in the U.S., regardless if they know it or not.
Since we started working on the story, Prime Asset Management says they're not going to evict Nicole Johnson from her apartment. The IRC has also offered to find new housing for the East Siloamuas. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
It was a rough day on Wall Street. Stocks plunged 800 points. It was the worst drop this year. Analysts say the Dow sank after the bond market flashed a warning sign about a possible recession for the first time since 2007. The Nasdaq also fell 242, while the S&P lost 85 points. New technology is helping to keep your credit card information from thieves, especially at the pump. KPBS science and technology reporter Shalina Chatlani shows us how a new app is doing just that.
Gas prices are already high enough as it is, but a technology that's being implanted in some gas station pumps may actually end up costing you more. That technology is called a skimmer, which can scan credit card numbers at a pump. Here at a gas station in San Diego, Christopher Road of the Secret Service says they can be financially disastrous.
It's amazing the sophistication and the advancement of what chips can hold now in such a small size, where they can hold anywhere from, we've seen as few as 10 all the way up to 2,000 identifier card numbers can be found on an actual device. Card skimmers, secretly installed by thieves, aren't new. But Bluetooth skimmers are the latest kind and are trending. Criminals can put them directly into the circuitry of the gas pump. Then they can leave and receive the credit card information wirelessly. But now with the evolution of Bluetooth technology, it's going to be emitting a Bluetooth signal that is actually pumping it out. So the bad guy could actually just be driving by and park across the street, link up to it, and actually have all the credit card data actually pushed out electronically without even having to go back in. Rhodes says these skimmers can lead to hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud every year. That's why the Secret Service has partnered with UC San Diego engineers Nishant Bhaskar and Aaron Schulman, who have created an app called Blutana.
We have designed an application that can be used by gas station inspectors to quickly determine whether there is the presence of any Bluetooth-based card skimmer at a particular station.
Schulman says there are commercial or internal phone apps that can detect Bluetooth devices, but Blutana is more targeted. It picks up the unique frequencies that skimmers tend to use and highlights them on the interface.
We actually did a study where we went to over 1,000 gas stations to try to find out if the way those applications were looking for skimmers was accurate, and also to develop more accurate techniques. And eventually we built those techniques into our application.
Blutana isn't open to the public, but it's being used by 44 inspectors across 6 states, including some in San Diego. The Secret Service isn't using the app, but can get leads from those inspectors. In the meantime, the Secret Service's Christopher Road says consumers should still take steps to be safe at the pump.
Maybe using a pump that's a little bit closer to the actual attendant. A lot of our skimming devices have not been pulled out if the pump is close there because it's hard to get it in and out. Also, if they do have to use a debit card, or try not to use a debit card, because if your card is compromised, then the money comes directly out of your banking, your checking account, your savings account.
Or, UC San Diego researchers say, just pay inside. For KPBS News, I'm Shalina Chatlani.
A whistleblower says UC San Diego is putting thousands of people at risk. This person claims the university is not following rules to protect people who take part in research. iNews Source investigative reporter Brad Racino explains.
In a letter delivered Monday to top University of California officials, the anonymous whistleblower warns, quote, "What is going to happen is someone will get hurt." The letter criticizes UCSD's Human Research Protections Program and says in part that university leadership pressures staff to approve unethical or dangerous studies to bring in more grant money. It also says UCSD withholds risk information from research subjects, ignores concerns about conflicts of interest, and fails to alert authorities to serious problems that occur as required under federal guidelines. The whistleblower calls UCSD's program the most serial non-compliant throughout the University of California system, if not in the country. Michael Carome is a former associate director at the U.S. Office for Human Research Protections. He read the complaint and said it suggests serious systemic problems at UCSD.
The university chancellor, I think, needs to take the complaint seriously, fully investigate it, and assuming that the concerns raised are confirmed, take major action to remove and hold accountable, individuals that have encouraged noncompliance.
A UCSD spokesman told iNewsSource that a formal investigation has been opened and the allegations will be investigated through an official process. For KPBS, I'm iNewsSource investigative reporter Brad Racino.
iNewsSource is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. It's estimated that 7 in 10 Americans use social media. Now, new evidence suggests those platforms may be harmful to the mental health of teens. Mandy Gaither has more in today's Health Minute.
It's become commonplace, the constant scrolling of the screen, searching social media. But a new study in the Lancet Child Adolescent Health Journal suggests those platforms increase a teen's exposure to bullying, can interfere with their sleep and exercise, which can then harm their mental health. Some are more vulnerable than others.
Much more likely to occur in girls. Boys seem to be fairly insulated from those specific effects.
Dr. Sanjay Gupta says there are clear changes in the brain during social media use. What's unknown now, whether there are long-term effects.
Looking at your social media, you've gotten a bunch of attention from some sort of post or likes or whatever it might be. We do know that you can get these bursts of these feel-good hormones, neurotransmitters in your brain. What we don't know is, does that then change your brain somehow, make it more tolerant so that it's harder to get joy out of things?
Gupta says parents should not only pay attention to their teen's screen time, but also the frequency, how often the child is on social media each day. For today's Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
After 2 weeks, the baby rhino born at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park is thriving. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the birth is an important milestone to save a rhino species from extinction.
Victoria led little Edward out of their barn into an exercise paddock. The not quite 3-week-old southern white rhino is feisty, and keeper Johnny Capiro says Edward wants Mom to play along.
He's trying to engage her in play, and she just might not be feeling as excited and as playful like a typical mom.
Edward also enjoys the muddy area in the middle of the pen. Capiro says the calf is curious and full of energy, especially in the mornings.
He is very bold. He's really silly and playful. He's a good addition to our rhino family here. He fits right in, and he's doing well with his mom.
Mom is particularly attentive, occasionally shielding her son from onlookers. It's a protective spirit that keepers are happy to see, and they're pleased the calf is packing on the weight. He was 148 pounds just 2 days after birth. Now the little rhino weighs 220 pounds. Capiro says he'll add about 25 pounds a month during his first year of life. Edward's playful passion has zoo officials excited, but the zoo's reproductive physiologist, Barbara Durant, says they're most pleased that the young rhino is here at all.
This is our first successful artificial insemination, and it was with frozen semen. That's only happened once before in the whole world. And it's the first artificially inseminated calf in North America.
Durant says Edward represents an important lifeline in the effort to save the critically endangered northern white rhino. Only 2 are still alive, and both are too old to breed. Durant says Edward's mom, Victoria, is one of 6 southern white rhino females playing a critical role in the northern white rhino's struggle against extinction.
And now we know that Victoria is what we call a proven female. So we know she can conceive, she can carry a fetus to term, she can give birth, and she can take care of it. That's really important for us because in the future, Victoria and the other girls here at the Rhino Rescue Center are going to be surrogates for northern white rhino embryos.
Scientists are still working out how to create northern white embryos from frozen cell samples. That gives Durant time to get each of the 6 southern whites pregnant twice, once by artificial insemination and once by embryo implantation.
Once we're ready with northern white rhino embryos, these females will each have had 2 calves, so we know that they're fully capable.
Victoria has already taken that first step, and another member of the herd is close. Postdoctoral fellow Parker Pennington says another rhino female, Amani, is about 400 days into her pregnancy, and a person might think that she would show it.
No, they're quite large animals and they don't show their pregnancy quite so much.
Pennington says the calf is located in the back half of the belly near the hind legs. She typically uses an ultrasound wand that gives researchers glimpses of the calf. She just doesn't get a complete picture because the ultrasound is small and the calf is large.
Because it does sit so deep into her belly, we can actually see it and we can even detect movement on occasion when it's feeling active.
Amani still has about 100 days to go in her pregnancy, but so far, Pennington says she's tracked right along with the pregnancy that Victoria went through. She says the rhinos are helping teach researchers.
They're giving us some of the first ever information like this. They're allowing us access so that we can actually see what's going on and get some measurements. On occasion, we can measure things like a heart or a heart rate, and so that's new information for us.
With one playful rhino calf already on the ground and another one close, attention is turning to the rest of the herd. And the hope is that maybe a couple of more rhinos will be pregnant by the end of the year. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
If you were out and about in any part of San Diego County, chances are you felt the heat. In fact, there's a heat advisory in effect. Meteorologist Dajia Swad has our forecast.
Hopefully had a fantastic Wednesday as we move through tonight. Partly cloudy skies near the coast and dropping down into the upper 60s here in San Diego. A little bit cooler as we head into Oceanside with an overnight low at 60 and dropping down to 83 in Borrego Springs and 63 in Mount Laguna. Now, our big story for the next several days is going to be this heat building across the southwest as we have an upper level high pressure continuing to come across the western half of the U.S., the southwestern half of the U.S. So in a place like Palm Springs, for example, the high in 2015 was a record high at 118 degrees. We'll be getting close to that forecasted high in Palm Springs at 117. And many of these locations listed on the map, such as Vegas and Phoenix, also going to be climbing close to record highs. With that being said, we got to stay hydrated, keep ourselves on the cool and safe side. We are looking at excessive heat advisories in these counties highlighted in orange. We'll also be looking at excessive heat warnings out to the east of us. With that in mind, you want to check the back seat of your car. Drink plenty of water, take frequent breaks if you plan to be outdoors, and check in with the pets as well as the children as we continue to experience these hot days. We'll be topping off in the upper 70s in San Diego and Oceanside, a tad bit above average, but we're really seeing temperatures on the high side, or in a place like Ramona with a high of 99, 115 in Borrego Springs, and we're usually sitting around 106. So we are feeling that heat taking us a bit above average, and we'll continue to see into tomorrow that heat sticking around, but some relief as we move into the extended forecast. So Thursday, Friday here at the coast, we're in the upper 70s, then back into the mid 70s Saturday and Sunday, calling for partly sunny skies. If you're in the inland areas, 94 tomorrow, 90 on Friday, partly sunny skies Saturday. Notice that temperature out of the 90s and into the mid 80s. Also to be noticing some relief here in the deserts. We're topping off at 115 for tomorrow, as I mentioned, above average, getting closer to average as we head into your Friday and Saturday. Don't get me wrong, still going to be in the triple digits with lots of sunshine. And in the mountain areas, we'll be dropping out of the 80s and making our way back into the upper 70s for your Saturday and Sunday forecasts. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swad. Back to you.
People at local beaches have seen a number of recent shark sightings close to shore. These sightings, in fact, are not limited to the West Coast. A family visiting a beach in Massachusetts had a close encounter with a great white. Take a look.
No way. Oh my God.
A family out on Cape Cod Bay getting the surprise of their life.
That's incredible. Holy.
Take a look at that great white swimming alongside the family's small boat Friday afternoon. They say this was about 7 miles off of Provincetown.
We could see it clearly for like a while, and then it would go under, and it would pop back up like a minute later, like to our left or to our right.
The shark hanging out by the boat for more than 15 minutes.
It was like completely calm. It was just like gracefully swimming at the top of the water.
Then, that great white bumping the boat as it swam underneath.
I could have reached down and touched it. It was like right alongside the boat.
One of the people on the boat saying this is a first-time sighting for him.
All these years living right on the water, being on it every day, have never seen a shark. And so it was just once-in-a-lifetime thing.
He says getting the experience with the great white was something special.
A little visit from Jaws.
That's a scary sight. That was just one of several recent shark sightings off Cape Cod. Officials report 7 in one day alone. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.